Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today is the 13th of September 2013. It's also Friday. What could possibly go wrong? My name is Arleme, also known as the Artrix. I'm here to bring you the new episode number 6 of the Artrix Art vlog show. It's been a while since I did a Artrix Art vlog show. Reasons that are related to either noise or not having time. But here I am, sitting down at my nice little condenser microphone to tell you a little bit about art stuffs and other assorted crap. Today's episode is almost entirely dedicated to Press A to Float, a little piece in which I depict all the humanized ponies using their unique method to defy gravity in the lines of platforming games. Think Rayman Origins or the recently released Legends. Also, since I am technically a brony, blah blah blah, I feel obliged to drop down my 2 cents on Equestria Girls. But before we get into that, let's dive into what this show is actually about, which is the artwork. Oh boy, did I underestimate this one. This was supposed to be quickie, something that I would do like real quick, like it was supposed to be more like a sketch thing, but I ended up spending a significant amount of time on it. But in hindsight, I'm not exactly disappointed that I did. I had this idea for some time now. It was mostly related to Rayman Origins, in which you can actually let your character float for, well, as much time as you like until you hit the ground, of course. But I didn't actually got around and actually drawing this until I saw the trailer for Super Mario 3D World, in which Peach of all characters is once again present. And like Super Mario USA or 2, depending on, where you live, that was also the case. You could play as Peach and her special ability was to float for a short period of time. So I finally decided to sit down and actually draw it. And one of the nice things about this piece is that I could try and figure out how each of the characters would perform this action without repeating myself. My design of humanized Twilight features a relatively large dress. It goes well over her knees, so there's plenty of dress to work with. And since she does do magic, she can simply use it to turn her dress into a big parachute that, depending on the conditions, either softens her landing or propels herself up into the air. Which is basically what happens to all characters, but I'll just explain in this instance. And of course, to undo this, she simply needs to cut off the magic supply, which, reverts back to a regular old dress. Next up is Fluttershy, and her design also features a dress. It's actually longer than Twilight's, but I didn't want to go the same route as I did for Twilight, so I tried something different here. Instead, I decided to utilize Fluttershy's big sweater, which is large enough to, act as a parachute. And it looks like she just doesn't know what to think of it. But hey, it's a platforming game, and screw your logic. Next up is the Cutie Mark Crusaders, which are a single playable character in this hypothetical game. That's right, the 3 characters play as one single character, as a single unit that would make a drill sergeant proud. The basic idea is that each of the Cutie Mark Crusaders performs an action that is not typical to their, quote, kind that they are assigned to. For instance, Applebloom, who is an earth pony, does the flying. Scootaloo is doing things like swinging ropes and doing other lifting, which is typically associated with earth ponies. And Sweetie Belle does all them fighting moves. So yeah, in this case, since it's all about, the floating animation, we can see Applebloom using her hair bow to act as sort of a propeller, while the other 2 Cutie Cutie Mark Crusaders are holding on to her since they lack this ability. The basic idea of multiple characters being controlled as one came from a indie sort of game named The Cave, which was released on all major platforms including Steam and my version, the Wii U, which features a character named the Twins, which is controlled as one character even though it's two separate entities. Which I found rather interesting, though it must be noted that this game was rather slow paced, so that might have actually eased this basic concept into actual gameplay. Next up is good old Applejack, and yeah, I had to consider a few things before I was able to put this one into practice. Applejack is typically not exactly associated with aviation, and in the end I decided to go with her hat, which can comically increase in size and acts as a parachute. The reason for this is that it's readily available and can be deployed quickly, which makes it ideal for this sort of thing. I may actually have rendered her a bit too big for this picture, but it's not really that much of an issue. It's just something that kinda slightly irks me about it. Next up is our dainty lady, Rarity. My design for Rarity doesn't really have any built-in methods of flotation, so to speak. She's wearing a fairly tight tube skirt, and her hair is kinda... It could serve as a helicopter, but then again, that's already reserved to the Cutie Mark Crusader, so I didn't want to repeat myself. So instead I opted to just give her a cute little umbrella. Some of you may actually realize that this is a vague allusion to Super Princess Peach, in which Peach uses her umbrella as a weapon and as a flotation device, although this particular umbrella frickin' talks and got more character development than Peach herself, which is kinda ironic considering that it was a game named after Peach, so that's kinda awkward. But enough about Peach. So Rarity uses her umbrella to defy gravity and being all dainty in the process. The umbrella also serves as a weapon, so we got that covered as well. It also reminds me of this one character from Skullgirls that I recently got on Steam. And if you haven't played this game yet, go get it. It's only €14 or well, $15 I guess, but really get it. It is a nice little fighting game, and the animation is gorgeous. And no, I'm not just saying that because there's a lot of pretty chicks in it, though it certainly has something to do with it. Then there's Rainbow Dash. It is slightly ironic that my design for Rainbow Dash doesn't have any obvious modes of aviation, so I had to, you know, cheat a little bit and decided to make her jacket, you know, increase in size and serve as sort of a, well, it's not really a parachute, it's more like a hang glider. In hindsight, I'm not exactly too pleased about the way Rainbow Dash came out, but a lot of people seem to like it, and it's a really nice execution of the whole concept nonetheless. I don't know, I guess there's just it's just lacking some coolness, so to speak. It needs to be 20% cooler. Yeah, I went there. Still like her overall design. I do remember going through some designs for Rainbow Dash, but this current design with a plain, well, it's not really a t-shirt, but it is a shirt with a light jacket and some regular old jeans. It's simple, but it really fits a character like Rainbow Dash, I think. And I don't know, I should draw more often, I think. Even though Rainbow Dash isn't exactly one of my favorite characters, but I digress. And last but not least, we have Pinkie Pie. And her method of flotation turns out to be balloons. How typical. Initially, I wanted to create some sort of weird contraption, as seen as in one of the earlier episodes, where she basically built some sort of flying machine out of thin air in what is probably a couple of hours at most. But in context of a video game, that would just look pretty silly. I can imagine a system like that to be deployed easily and quickly. And instead I went to something similar that is able to deploy balloons really quick-like. This is an allusion to my headcanon that humanized earth ponies, which I occasionally call earthies, have an innate ability to be more creative in the engineering sense of the word, which in turn is an illusion that human beings have become the dominant species on this planet not by brute force but by cunningly using technology to alter our environment and to better our own lives. I'm really pleased by the way this Pinkie Pie came out, which was also mirrored by some other viewers of my live stream who really felt that this particular rendition of Pinkie Pie really emulates the cheeriness and happiness that this character entails. Of course, such a character in a platforming game would shout "wee" and "yay" all the time and have lots and lots of streamers all over the place. But this is a given. Once I drew all the characters, I just slapped a big background behind it and called a day. But in the end, it was a really fun picture to work on. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a high effort piece, and I didn't really spend that much time on the shading, but it's a really nice piece nonetheless, if I say so myself. The link to the image is in the video description, which you can find down below the video. You know, that one thing that people tell you to read, that so many people don't read, but it's right there. Click it and you'll be pleased. And now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Equestria Girls. If you haven't seen it already, it's almost impossible to miss it, because I often see it in my suggested videos. The enforcement of the copyright seems to be very lax, even though they're really pushing for, well, at first the theoretical release and now the DVD release. They, as with My Little Pony, they want as many people to see it in order to, you know, sell toys. Except that I really don't get the impression that it's got the same wow factor as My Little Pony in the sense of, you know, sales. And yeah, let's get into that. So I sat down and watched it, and my initial reaction was that I was severely underwhelmed by this movie. The odd thing is that it isn't bad, or at least it's not as bad as I thought it would be, but I just found it to be so boring. In one of my early episodes, I sort of predicted what the basic plot would be, and as it turns out, it was exactly that. I'm not kidding. It was basically Twilight loses her MacGuffin and she had to go into this alternative universe to get her MacGuffin. That was basically it. And this alternative universe is basically just a average high school in any town, USA. The setting of this movie is a major turn off. It's compared to the original show, which has this expansive universe with all these different elements and what have you. It's just not present in Equestria Girls. It's basically just your average high school. There's nothing special about it. It's just, aside from perhaps the library, it's just a really dull looking school. There's nothing special about it at all. The protagonist of this movie, Sunset Shimmer, is rather boring as well. Like I said in the earlier videos, he turns out to be that stereotypical preppy popular teenage girl that more or less has everything wrapped around her finger, and all this time I'm wondering why. Really, I'm looking at this school and there doesn't seem to be any genuine conflict. No one really seems to like Sunset Shimmer, and still she somehow controls everything. Wait, what? And then there was Brad, which turns out to be named Flash Sentry for some retarded reason. Needless to say, Brad is a pretty boring character. He's basically just Brad Pitt in, well, this pony high school human world. And this romance thing going on between Twilight and Sentry was pretty fucking retarded. You should realize that Twilight is a pony. She just happens to be in a human body, but she is still the character Twilight Sparkle, and she's still pony, blah blah blah. You could chalk it down to hormones, but you should realize that she's essentially a pony that apparently has hots for humans, which is kinda creepy. Also, her affection for Sentry came out of the blue, and it wasn't very convincing. It felt like it was just thrown in there because of some corporate mandate, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere at this point. It's barely touched upon, but still, it's like one of those things that it was just utterly pointless. It wasn't necessary for this movie. Closing arc of the movie, in which it was revealed that Sunset Shimmer is like this big baddie and basically turns into demon woman or whatever, was slightly interesting, but at this point my suspension of disbelief was shattered to the point that I just didn't care anymore. Also, for some dumbass reason, because the power of friendship, they certainly can do magic in this world where magic was supposedly impossible, and yeah, and then there was the generic rainbow destroy the villain scene, and it didn't do it for me. In the end, it's a very forgettable movie. It didn't leave much of an impression on me. It does feel like this is the last we'll see of this whole Equestria Girls fiasco, even though they're still going to touch upon it on with the whole comics thing that's going on. The whole thing felt rather soulless, and I hope we can chalk this down as something that Hasbro tried and failed, because the general consensus seems to be, well, what I said, it's forgettable. It's just not MLP. And with that said, this is the end of this episode of the Artrix Art vlog show. Rate, favorite and subscribe as always, and see you guys the next time. The Artrix signing out. Kenningsbye.